Good afternoon, everyone. It is 12:35 p.m. on Thursday, September 28, and I will call to order the regular meeting of the Spokane Regional Health District Board of Health. At this time, Ann, would you take roll of those present by in-person and by remote?
Mayor Kevin Freeman.
Present.
Commissioner Josh Kearns.
Here.
Commissioner Mary Cooney.
Present.
Commissioner Amber Waldroff.
Present.
Board Member Christopher Patterson. I do not see him online or present. Dr. Alicia Polacani.
Present.
And we know that Board Member Duranona is not present.
Let the record show that we have 5 members present, and that constitutes a quorum of the board to conduct business. So at this time, the meeting will go forward with a quorum, and I will go to item number 3, which is our board report. First is the chair report. I would remind folks that at this time, your agenda is in your packet. The remaining documentation is available online at the Board of Health website under the Meetings tab, and only 6 microphones can be on at one time, but that won't be an issue. And we have received no citizen input for this meeting. I would, as the chair, remind folks that we will have an executive session today that is important. So I hope those attending remotely can at least stay through that. Second is budget season will be coming up, so it is important for our members for our remaining 2 meetings that we have a quorum to conduct business for budgetary purposes for 2024. That ends my chair report this afternoon. Committee reports, the Budget and Finance Committee, I will report that out. That was able to meet last Thursday. The Budget and Finance Committee reviewed the vouchers for July 2023 and August 2023. We found no issues with those vouchers and would recommend approval of the vouchers as part of the consent agenda for the full board. We will be discussing as we went through, we have a couple items that have made it to the full agenda today, which are item number, action items A, B, and C were brought to the Budget and Finance Committee, and we can discuss those as the board. And then our proposed 2024 fee schedule and 2024 budget. Any questions for me as the financial representative? Financial Committee representative. Thank you. And so, Josh, is there anything you want to talk about for policy and education?
Yeah, we have a meeting scheduled for next week on the 5th. I would ask that all the members please review the 2023 legislative agenda before attending that meeting, and we will sort of use that as our basis to draft our 2024 legislative agenda.
Any questions for Josh on that? And then lastly, the Executive Committee of the Board of Health meeting was held also on Thursday. There was basically a setting of today's agenda and reviewing these action items, and that concluded the executive meeting. So at this time, I would ask that we go to item number 4, which is consideration of our consent agenda today, consisting of the meeting minutes for the July 2023 regular meeting and the vouchers for July 2023 and August 2023. Would any member present or via remote like to take any of those items separately for consideration? Seeing or hearing no action to take any items separately, do I have a motion on the consent agenda as presented today?
Move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the consent agenda today is approved unanimously. Thank you. And that brings us to item number 5, our executive session today. Michelle, do you want to take that?
The board will go into executive session for 2 reasons: to review qualifications of applicants for public employment pursuant to RCW 42.30.1101G, and then also to discuss litigation or potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.1110(1I). We are scheduled out for, I think, 50 minutes for that. You want to start with 30? Just in case we're done sooner?
Yeah, let's start.
So 30 minutes, no decisions will be made during executive session.
So at this time, I would like to ask the board members to stay and our legal counsel. We will either reconvene or ask for an extension at 1:30 p.m. Thank you very much.
Not 1:30, 30 minutes from now, so.
30 minutes from now. Sorry, 30 minutes from now, so that would be, we'll say 1:15. Apologize. 1:15 will either be a extension or return to the regular meeting. So the board is back from the executive session. It is now 1:30 p.m. We had one extension of 15 minutes. And for the record, we have taken no action as a result of that executive session. And I would also like to note for the record that just prior to the commencement of the executive session, Board Member Patterson joined us and was a participant in that executive session. So he came on just as we were entering into the executive session. And for the record, Tom Young of Raffet and Associates was present during that executive session as well to discuss qualifications of applicants for a public employment. So now we are back to item number 6, our action items for today. Our first action item is Resolution 2303, adopting a Spokane Regional Health District asset disposal policy. Carrie Gridall, would you take this matter for us, please?
Good afternoon, Board. I'm here today to present our asset disposal policy. Prior to this proposed policy, we were lacking a current policy that would allow the district to dispose properly of assets purchased with public dollars. So we took a look at various other community policies and have come up with this one, which we think will address our needs. There is a limit of a top end of 5,000 listed in there, and that's based on our grants that usually talk about equipment purchases of 5,000 and above. We also have a procedure, I believe, that was attached to the policy that will provide direction to the SRHD staff, along with a worksheet that the procurement and contracts office will be working with staff in filling out and preparing. So I hope, do you have any questions, you can ask me now? Sure.
So I have 3 areas of concern. The first one is it doesn't state where the money from the sale of the assets is going.
I believe it goes back into Kim, you might be able to address this. It depending on if it's a grant-funded item, it has to go back to the grant. If it's a general fund asset, it would go back in. Kim's office would be working on that issue. It would
Okay, I
probably
just
go back into the funds.
wasn't clear here, so it seems to me like that should be stated. The second was the last line in which it says the division director will determine whether the disposal proposal should be presented to the Board of Health for approval, and then we'll determine an appropriate bid price. So first of all, is it the division director or is it the board that's determining an appropriate bid price for the asset? That wasn't kind of clear in the way that sentence was written.
The division director would make a proposal to the board.
Okay.
And that would be based on the asset worksheet that is also part of your packet, the work that's gone on before that. Some of that is described in the actual procedure and not in the policy.
Okay.
About how we dispose and how we make that determination. The asset worksheet, that's part of that as well. The policies are usually, more kept nebulous in a giant cosmic way rather than drilling down to specific procedures, because if procedures change, then we don't have to come back in. What you want is a policy that just sets up some sort of direction for SRHD staff right now, which doesn't exist.
Okay. And then lastly is, again, where it says that the division director will determine what will be presented to the board. And that I have a concern with, because as far as I see my responsibility to the health district, I don't like the idea of somebody else thinking what they think I should know and not know. So I just think about accountability and oversight and everything else.
Well, and I think what that would be is basically they would come in and talk about what and how they've derived at that purchase price, what they've done ahead of time, so that they would be able to provide that information to board members, so that you would have an idea, this is how we arrived at that price of 5,000 and above. we've done the work, we've done the homework on this.
Okay.
And then you make the determination. It's up to you to make that determination of what, if that's a fair price or not.
Okay, that makes sense, because the way it read to me was that they're going to determine what of these assets meeting those requirements we would be presented with or not presented with, is what it read more like to me, so, okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
Any other questions for Ms. Griddle? So next action on this would be, this is still in draft form. So we would ask that this come back to us in final form at the next meeting for our consideration and action.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Next item is Resolution 2304, an amendment to Resolution 1207, and authorized to use solid waste tipping fees for the Gray and Oregon Road fires. I have summarized that title. Mr. Byrne.
Yes. Thank you, Board, for considering this. So this resolution is just a little bit of history. This would allow us to use a tipping fee funds that were put in place back in 2012. Back in 2012, the solid waste program was running a deficit, so the board authorized us to put in a 32-cent per ton tipping fee, which those funds were specifically designated under that resolution for that running of that program only. So because of the COVID assignments, we had quite a few staff assigned to COVID, which allowed us to redirect some of those funds. And then we've also had some departures from those programs. We've built a surplus in that program. So we have the funds available to use for this purpose. And so we had some discussions with Department of Emergency Management with Chandra Fox, and they have a need for that. So we're bringing forth to the board, asking that we free up $175,000 of that specifically for the use of sampling, testing, and disposal of that waste for those two fires. We do have timelines on there, so we're asking that the individuals apply for and receive the money by June of next year, and any money left at the end of that would then be returned to the solid waste fund. So, questions for me?
Questions for Ray?
Me again. So in regards to this, since we're going to the effort to make, a resolution, I'm just wondering if we could take the opportunity to be a little bit more forward-thinking with our resolution, in that we live in a fire-prone area, and this is not the only time that this is going to happen. This is going to happen again in the future. So instead of making this resolution just specific to the Gray and Oregon fire, what about future? And making this resolution to where then, per our whatever guidelines or what have you, if this happens again, then this is already in place to be able to help.
Well, the hope is that we don't we don't have a surplus in the future. We were kind of under unique circumstances because of COVID, departure of staff that built that. And so we felt that it was more specific to this. If we do show a reserve in the future, we'd like to be able to come back to the board with a specific ask on that.
Commissioner Waldron.
I was just going to say that's a great idea, Dr. Policani, and actually we had a brief conversation on the Board of County Commissioners about other, maybe not this particular surcharge, but other ways to do surcharges or tipping fees in general with the solid waste transfer stations. So Commissioner Cuny led a short conversation about this when we had a briefing from Chandra Fox earlier this week. So we are considering how can we be forward-thinking in our planning, right, for the future. So no decisions have been made, but we know that we need to be doing that probably as part of our growth management planning around climate change and fires. And so I think it's a great comment, and we do need to think about it. But this particular surcharge is specific to public health, and it just happens to be, is what I'm hearing, that there is a surplus and we have a great need to help people right now with their debris bringing their debris in, so, and get it removed, so for public health and safety. So anyway, but it's a great idea, and great minds think alike, because we were just discussing it earlier this week at the Board of County Commissioners.
Yeah, and we did hold money. Part of this, that surplus is actually going to balance the 24 budget, and we did hold a little bit back also to balance the 25 budget. So we don't know if there's going to be any leftover money from that, but we did consider that, but because of the specific need here, we wanted to limit that. Plus, we have to be careful with the gifting of public funds. So.
Are there other questions from our remote members? No, I see nods, thank you. I'm not hearing anything from Josh. So this resolution in your packet does have draft on it. We do have a final version of this ready to go. If nobody has any issues, we could consider this for passage today. And execute this today to get these funds out there. We know from a number of discussions that these folks have a need, and if we have funds available and it is targeted and specific, then we may wish to consider that. So is there anyone who has an issue with not considering this today? Having this as the first touch and having a second touch? I'm not seeing or hearing anything, so at this time, I would ask, is there a motion on Resolution 2304 as presented?
I move to approve Resolution 23-04 as presented.
I would second that motion.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, Resolution 2304 is passed unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll get that around for people's signature, and we can go forward on that. Thank you very much, Ray, for working with Chandra on this. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you. Council?
Resolution 2303, also I have it here in non-draft form, ready to be signed if we want to go back and approve that now.
Did we have any changes from that? Do we wish to consider that? Is there anybody who does not wish to consider 2303 today? So
I would move to approve Resolution 23-03 as presented.
is there a second?
I'll second.
So moved and seconded. Is there any discussion from the board regarding 2303 as presented? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor of Resolution 2303, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, we have passed Resolution 2303 as presented. Thank you very much. And so that brings us to item 6C, an approval of a contract between Sayre Fossum and the Spokane Regional Health District. Ms. Phillips.
Thank you. The board might recall that we had a process in place about a year ago where we were doing a request for proposal for representation council for the district and specifically for the board. With the changes that we are and processes that we're going through now, we've actually put several versions of a temporary contract in place. The district recommends that we actually create, rather than do a short extension, but create a one-year contract, which would allow the board time to revisit the RFP process. So what's in front of you is merely an extension of that with the updated fee schedule. In addition to that, we have recommended that item number 15 on subcontractors be added. We do have a very high number of public record requests that end up being processed through the firm currently. These actually can be a liability for us. We wanted to ensure that we had the ability to have those addressed in a timely manner and support council in that process.
Any questions from board members regarding, to Ms. Phillips regarding this contract? I would say that, oh, Commissioner Keeney.
Yeah, I would just speak to it. I think we were part, I think Kevin, well, I'm not sure, Kevin, if you were part of the process as we went out for an RFP, and I can say that due to timing of things and changes in some of those individuals and in the return requests for proposals, that I'm in favor of this, but I think this is the appropriate thing to do, and so I'm in favor of moving forward with this at this point in time.
Any other questions or comments from the board? So the motion would be before the board to authorize the board chair to execute this contract between Spokane Regional Health District and Sayre and Fossum for a period, the contract as presented for the period up to December 31st of 2024. Is there any motion? Does anybody like that one?
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and, okay. Dr. Polakani beat you. Any discussion from the board? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, I will execute said contract and go forward from there. Thank you all very much. So that concludes our action items for today, and that brings us to our reports. The first report is from our administrative, or deputy administrator in the administrative officer, but so Lola is going to forego her report today because we've kind of chewed through most of what she would be reporting on. So now we will move to report 7B, which is our financials, or financial report, which also includes the upcoming budget. So Ms. Kramars.
Good afternoon, everyone. A couple items from the finance division of the health district today. In September, actually in July, August, and September, we've been under an audit, specifically with the state, Washington State Auditor's Office, and they have gone through and done the financial statement audit and the federal single audit. And we actually had our exit conference this past Tuesday in order to meet the filing requirement deadline of September 30th. So I'm happy to report that we have been filed with the Federal Clearinghouse, and that has been accepted, so we filed on time. We also have the accountability audit, which is the third audit the state auditor's offices prepare, and that will be completed realistically in the month of October, but our deadline there is December 31st. Additionally, we also had the Washington State Department of Health on site to do their fiscal review of the health district as a subrecipient to Department of Health, and that went very well. They were here for 2 full days and met with our finance team as well as several of the program managers in the federal programs and state programs that are under Department of Health. So we've been under audit. Additionally, the health district has been working towards our 2024 budget. So just to remind everyone of the process, we start in June each year to pull together the budget templates, load the budget with the personnel that's in our payroll system as of June 30th. And then we roll out budget templates to our program managers and our directors. And so they spend some time going through each of their divisional programs and projects, and they look at their fee schedules, fees that they may need for the following year. And then ultimately they get submitted to their division directors for approval, and then they go, then finance does a budget roll-up by division and then again by the whole agency. And so there's a lot of review meetings taking place. Another part of the budget is working, of course, with our Board of Health Budget and Finance Subcommittee, and we met on September 7th and then again on September 21st to review the budget that was first pulled together as a roll-up with the health district. We did come in with a local dollar ask initially from the health district of 2.5 million, and working through with Budget and Finance Committee and having some discussions on the programs with the local dollar ask. We're able to bring our ask down to just over 2 million, which is before you today. So that's where we're at in the budget development. I'll touch back on our financial report first, and I'll come back to the budget document. So apologize, skipping ahead. We did not have a board meeting in August, so I'm reviewing both July and August in this report today. You can look through July's column, and we had a receipt of $1.438659, which is the half-year public health appropriations from the state of Washington, and that's expected each year, July and December, we receive those funds from the state. We also received our third quarter county contribution of the $500,000 in July, and we had, because this is an August report, we were able to show our billings in the indirect federal and state grants. Those have all been billed. Moving forward into the column of August, we have not yet billed for our indirect federal grants or our state, so there's very few dollars there. But again, we did receive $2.968 million in the Foundational Public Health Services funds, which is received every July and January. And so year to date, we're at $33 million in our funding because of a few of those advance payments, and we're at $31 million for expenses. So we're running a surplus at the moment of 1.759. That's mostly due to those advance payments that have come through with the county, the state, and the FPHS funding received in advance. So we are under anticipated expenses for the year through August would be 67%. Our revenue's running at 63, our expenses are at 60. And so collectively we have a surplus of 1.7 million, and that brings our unassigned reserves to 24%. And our total reserves are at 18 million. So that would be the July and August report. So moving forward, and then I should share also a little bit about the audit. The audit exit conference. There are 3 levels of reporting that can come out of an audit, and the lowest level is exit comments, which are usually verbal. The auditors have changed to put those now in writing, and they're directly to management, and specifically really the finance team, about some corrections or some things they've noted for ways for improvement, but they're just real insignificant items. So an exit comment is great, gives you area to improve. Management letter is a little more formal. It's part of the exit packet, which you will all receive if you weren't attending the audit exit conference. You'll receive that this week. And that's actually a little more formal observation of potentially some deficiencies in either compliance or documentation, and actually areas for improvement. And there's not a negative aspect to getting a management letter as far as long as you incorporate your changes and have improvements. If you didn't, they would elevate realistically the next year to a finding. And a finding would be something that was not corrected through a management letter previous years, or something that was significant enough that there was either a loss of funds or potential loss of funds or misstatement of financials. That does impact what the auditors would look at from an ongoing basis. Typically, if you don't receive findings, you will be considered a low-risk entity, and they'll audit 20% of your federal dollars. If you become a high-risk entity or a non-low risk, they will audit 40%. So there's definitely an incentive to have a clean audit because it does cost more in future audits to raise that number of coverage. So having said all that, we did receive exit comments, which we welcome, and we did receive one management letter on areas where we can improve our subrecipient monitoring and those activities. So when the health district receives funds, and if we actually pass those funds on to another organization to run the program, then we have a level of monitoring of their activities and expectations to ensure that they have a federal single audit, and that we're reviewing all their documentation. So we had a few gaps in our documentation, so that's what the management letter was about. Nothing that we certainly can't repair and change our processes to ensure we don't have that in the future. So no findings is I'm happy to report. And the auditors have moved into the accountability portion of the audit, expecting that to wrap up at the end of October. And the deadline for that is December 31st. So that's where we're at with the audits. And then my next item is the fee schedule.
So, hang on, any questions on any of on either the audit or the monthly financials? Not hearing or seeing any, so Kim, please proceed.
Okay, thank you very much. So as I was mentioning, our budget process starts in June. We have our managers and directors reviewing their program and project budget for 2024, doing their forecasting, utilizing the staffing numbers that are in our payroll system as of June 30th of 2023. And part of that also is the fee schedule. So my report here on the fee schedule for 2024 is part of that budget evaluation. So some of the fees that we have on our schedule are routine and have been there from year to year. The very first page with public records, a lot of those are based on RCWs that have remained unchanged for many years. So the 15-cent, photocopy, that's routine. We would have that listed. So what's new or noteworthy in 2024 is that we do have a new fee listed here, credit card service fees. And in the past, the health district has absorbed the actual credit card fee charged by the merchants when we have transactions with credit cards. That cost is in excess of $100,000, and we've come to the point where we just really can't absorb that any further. So we're working with our current vendor for merchant services to identify what that fee will look like, and they'll help work with us on that. So we'd like to implement that January 1st. It's estimated to be at 2 to 2.5, up to 3.5% of the charge. It should be very common across the board in most entities now, but it just got to the point where we're not able to absorb it. And then the other costs, the fees are here, presentation of 23 compared to 24. Really, a lot of them are remaining unchanged. Environmental public health has a lot of fees, as you're aware. They establish their fees to recover their costs and not to run a surplus, as Ray indicated that we had in solid waste. So the other change to the 2024 fee schedule is treatment services has outpatient mental health, and they currently have a program manager and 3 mental health trainees. This would be to expand the mental health component of treatment services, and it's itemized what those services would be and then the new fee associated. So I wanted to point that out. And other than that, that's really the only changes of note in the fee schedule. And I can talk about that more in the budget as well.
So the one thing, the credit card convenience fee is a pretty standard fee that's charged by governmental agencies to recoup that cost. The treatment services fees for mental health, the board may want to, in the future, have a more robust discussion on that, just because it is my understanding that staff needs to be added to provide these types of services, that the staff, treatment services does have mental health professionals, some of them, but that to provide this level, I was kind of hoping that Charlie would have been here today, our board member Duranona, because he was able to cogently speak to that from his work. But that there may be some staffing level issues and some other thoughts as to, is this always the best use of staff, et cetera. Probably not something that you know, I should be engaged in leading, but might be something more from a board standpoint to consider it. Any comments from out there from Commissioner Cuney? Commissioner Cuney, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that we need to look at as a board because it definitely changes our model. And you know, we talked about it in theory, when they moved locations, that this was something that they wanted to do, but I think we need to, you know, we didn't have any documentation as to what the actual funding would be, and all of that. And as we know with the school wellness program that we're doing, Spokane County is actually contracting through School District 81 for the therapists and EST 101 for therapists as well, the different districts that we're extending that program to, because you do have to have a psychiatrist that is overseeing the therapists that are doing the programming. So we would have to see the same thing happen here, which is a whole other level than what we know of today. And so I think it's really that is a board discussion on the government side of that it's not operational, because that's us really moving to a whole other level and feeling is that the appropriate thing to do at this point in time, or not. And so again, I think that's, as you know, Kevin is saying, that's a discussion that we as a board really need to have to talk about if we want to extend those services, because those services are provided in the community at this point in time. And we also know that there is not trying to find employers or workers in that area is difficult. As I was just talking to my niece who's a psychiatric nurse practitioner over here in Seattle, and it's just hard to find people for those services. So I just think that's going to be a greater discussion that we have, so we make sure that we're all aware and making a rational decision to move forward or not to. That needs to be presented to us. So thank you, Kevin, for bringing that forward.
So I think maybe one of the things we should, before, and I want to give plenty of time for the actual budget, but I would say that perhaps we should ask our treatment services administrator, our director, to come in and kind of give a overarching presentation of what they are considering for outpatient mental health services in their new location, where they are going with this, how they have reached these conclusions, and basically what they think the staffing level is going to need to be, because I don't know if this is a cart before the horse sort of thing. I would urge us not to, the fee schedule is ancillary to this discussion. These fees that are presented in here are actually, as they are described, it's actually what would be charged, so it would be the usual and customary sort of thing. So I don't think we have to hold off on the fee schedule to go forward from this, but I do think that, as Commissioner Keeney was saying, it belies a greater level of conversation because it does move us into a realm of being a mental health provider. Although this population certainly does need it, and definitely warrants it, we need to understand if building something from the ground up is the best way to do this. And obviously, if these fees are not fully recoverable or things like that, it would then fall to a local dollar ask to make sure that this program would be maintained as a going concern once we establish it. And I think that understanding that, we don't want to build something and set it up for failure. I would just say that if this is obviously a new thing, and that we as a board should hear more about this before we go to that place. So that's my final comments on that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go, please, I'm done.
Oh, no, I'd say, yeah, I 100% agree. We need a lot more information. There's a lot of intricacies and potential pitfalls, so I welcome that further discussion. But quick question for you, Kim. Who pays these fees? For this mental health that we're just talking about now? Who
So some
pays
of them
those
are
fees?
billable. So What the budget will reflect here is, so we will bill to the extent that we can, if they're a covered service. And what we've had historically is we have had, we had one program manager in mental health, and we've added the 3 mental health trainees. But during this transition or this growth period, the opioid treatment side of the program has run a surplus, so they have covered really the gap in the billings for the mental health side. So this is the first year that we're showing, based on the income anticipated from the opioid treatment side, is not fully covering the mental health. So the budget that I have here rolled up at the agency, that's why there's a ask in treatment services for the first time.
Right, I understand. I was just, most of the clients can't afford to pay those fees, so that's why I was wondering who's going to be expected to pay, who will we billing them to?
Yeah, if it's covered and they have insurance, or if it's Medicaid eligible. Otherwise, it's reflected now and is a local dollar.
Got it.
And I will just add too, for everyone's benefit, the fee schedule is designed also as the budget to be a two-touch. So any discussion on this presentation of fee can be modified at the next meeting as well. So this doesn't have to be the version that goes forward. We have a second touch for that. So
Kim?
I'll move forward.
Kim,
I'm so sorry.
am I
Yeah.
understanding that some of these services are being provided today? There is a proposal to provide more mental health services to opioid treatment patients.
Correct.
But some of these are being provided, and this creates an actual fee then that you can bill for service.
Correct.
Okay.
And
All right.
we would actually, there are some positions that we don't currently have filled. For example, like a psychiatric ARNP isn't currently part of the budget. So in order to bill for those, we would have to hire some of those new positions. But yes, the ones that are not mentioned as new under mental health, those are currently being billed against. So there is some income that's coming in for the mental health program,
Thank you.
certainly.
More questions on the fee schedule? So budget, please.
Okay, so I've touched on a little bit of the process. Everyone has spent a few months on budget. So the intent here is to do the first pass or first touch of the budget today. I do need to bring something to your attention, and I apologize for this error. In the indirects line, which is near the very bottom, that column should net to 0 in the first column where it says agency total, and it currently has a negative 37,200. So I can see from my adjustments from our original version to this one today, this should be 0 here. So when I make that correction, the actual ask currently would be $2,071,722. So I do need to make sure everyone's aware of that change. So I will need to make that edit. But our budget brought forth to you today, we have at the very top our funding sources. And we do receive about $7 million in indirect federal. Those are specific grants to do specific activities and their deliverables. Then we also have $20 million in state funding. A big portion of the state funding is due to the state special education program and the early support services for infants and toddlers. We have, if you look further down under services, under custom services, we have $16 million there. A big portion of that $16 million is the pass-through payments to pay those providers for offering the services. So that contract does bring up our state funding, and then of course on our contracted services. So large dollars flow through. We have Medicaid and Medicare payments. We can bill through the treatment services program and through the HIV program. So that's where it's captured. And then fees and permits is predominantly environmental public health and their fees. We have rents based on the parking lot revenue that we have from staff. Interest is our Spokane County investment pool and our overnight funds based on our cash balance on each day. We have some estimation of some donations and foundation money that has come in the past. And so that's reflected in the $73,000. Public health appropriations is comes in each year from the state of Washington. It's been flatlined for as long as I recall, 20 years. So that number has been the same, but we do receive the funds January and July of every year. So that's state contribution. Foundational public health services has increased significantly in the last few years. In the early days, we had about 629,000, and over time, we've been receiving additional funds. The foundational public health services typically get rolled out to the LHJs with focus areas, and so we may have something identified to go specific to environmental public health, for example. And then what we've seen is that after a year or so of that allotment, then they pull it back in and put it into reinforcing capacity, which gives our health district more flexibility with those dollars. Some of them have maintained and stayed the same. So we have a new program called Life Course with Foundational Public Health Services, a large allotment, and that outlines exactly how we can spend those dollars that we hadn't had the year before. So we do anticipate them to continue, but FPHS is still fairly new, and it goes from July through June. So each year we're anticipating the same allotment as the year before, but it's not guaranteed at this point. But we have seen growth there. And then we have assigned fund balance and carryover. Those are dollars we have currently in our reserves that we're anticipating using in 2024 to help offset some of our costs. So some of those assigned fund balance are where we may have had a surplus in the past, and we were able to move it forward. So it's timing from taking it from 23 into 24. So total revenues are 52 million. If you look at our salaries and benefits, it's 30 million. So we're about 56% is salary and benefits. Our numbers skewed a little bit because we have that large state funding and then the large contracted payments. Otherwise, historically, the health district has run 70% and up in salaries and benefits because we mostly provide a service here. This budget does reflect 281.9 FTEs, and that is very similar to what we have now. We've hovered about 270 to 280. So that's the FTE count. 281.9. Overall, this budget is 1.23 million above the 2023 original budget. And ultimately, what I have here is what we reflect. The 2,071,000 is what our local dollar ask would be of Spokane County. We have provided, and we shared this with our Budget and Finance Committee as well, we have provided SBARs, documentation of each of the programs and projects that are asking for a local dollar. They have a local dollar ask, either in full or partial for their program. So those have been shared with Budget and Finance, and then of course with the full board regarding those asks. One other ask that's in here is our TB program has been supported by Spokane County, and we've seen an uptick in the TB cases as far as the quantity and the depth of response for those individuals. And so this budget does reflect an increase with a 1.0 RN being added to that TB program, and then it's billed to Spokane County. The actual program costs are billed to Spokane County based on our actual expenses. So that's reflected for an increase here. So the first column has the agency roll-up of the 2 million. Administration has a local dollar ask of 461,000. That's reflected in the SBAR. Predominantly, it's our communications program. It's not funded other than local dollars. We had the communications program in the indirect pool in the past, and we found that there are opportunities that our communication members can actually bill directly to grants for their work, and so it would be inappropriate to have them be in the indirect and then direct code. So we've elected to pull them out and cover it with local dollars for them. Then the next column is treatment services for that division. This historically has been a zero local dollar ask. And what we're referencing this year is the mental health component of the expenses is about $417,000, and the surplus from opioid treatment program is about $323 or so. So the net between the two is that we're actually in an ask position due to the mental health activities. Then we have environmental public health, which is a fee-based program. We don't want to run a surplus. If we do, as Ray mentioned, we keep reserves specific to those funding pots that the money came in. So solid waste, we had set those aside. Environmental public health also receives foundational public health services. So we're able to keep that division balanced to zero ask. Community health is the next division, and they're asking for $503,000. In the S bar, we've touched on where those asks are coming from, predominantly from the the health equity positions that we have. And 3 years ago, the board had asked us to incorporate health equity into the work at the health district. So we have hired a program manager, and we have 2 community health workers in that program. And there's an S bar related to that ask. And then we have disease prevention and response, and their ask is $972,000. And again, this is reflective of, we have the data center, which we have here at the health district, that if you're familiar with the Spokane Counts report and some of the other activities they do, data center is typically a local dollar ask, although they have some FPHS funding coming in now. And then we also have communicable disease investigation prevention, CDIP or EPI, also has FPHS funding, but not to cover the full program. So that's another part of their ask. And let's see if I make sure I didn't miss any others. Out of TB or DPR. I think that was the majority of the ask. So this is the roll-up. I'm certainly welcome to take any questions. We have some people in the audience too from different divisions that if you have any questions.
So as the budget and finance representative and the chair, I'll start off with just a few things. One is, as Kim mentioned, the TB services is not counted for in this budget that you see presented here. TB services is billed on an as incurred basis directly to the county. It is one of the few services that is specifically called out in the RCWs as required to be provided by the local health jurisdiction. And we have seen a significant uptick in TB cases in Spokane, particularly in disease-resistant TB. The communities that we see this in are need special attention, and it is something that we need to basically as a board and as a county address. And I think that that's within Dr. Velazquez's purview as the health officer. It is his expert opinion for putting this forward that we do need an additional RN focused up for TB. So that is something that is a discussion of cost to the local funding agency, the local funding entity, which is the county, but is not particularly germane to this budget right here as we bill those services to the county. So I want that. The other is that, just a couple points. One of the issues in here, or one of the items in here, is a 1.2 million capital ask for some renovations to the building. That's the windows, correct? No, the brickwork. That is the brickwork. Our brickwork is That's a subject near and dear to my heart. Our brickwork is starting to fall down, and we do need work on the mortar, et cetera, et cetera. And as this is now a component district of the county, if the brick falls down and the building falls down, it's kind of there, because this is back to being more of a county building than it is an agency building. I would say that that is accounted for in there, and it's something that needs to be done. So there is 1.2 million in there for that. That is in the administration side of things. And then just as a reminder for the past, up to 2015 or 2016, the county typically funded the Spokane Regional Health District at about $2.5 million a year for the local health, for the local contribution. The district has done the county has done a good job of realizing that that was underfunded at the level which they reached, the lowest level, which was 1.8 million. 2.2 million is, the district has done a very good job of keeping things around there. 2 million is not a hard and fast number. If we need more sometimes as a district, we need more. If we need less sometimes as a district, we need less. But we have in the past as a county and as a community funded as much as 2.5 million in the past. I would say, just from my standpoint of working on the Budget and Finance Committee and working through a number of iterations on the 2024 budget, particularly coming out of COVID, and knowing that we had ramped up on some services significantly during COVID, I would say that some of these, particularly community health and DPR, have done a good job of realizing that some of that is not sustainable, that those levels were not always going to be maintained. We had extra staffed up, and so there has been due consideration, particularly if you look through these S bars here, there has been due consideration of measures that need to be taken in order to right size, if you will, the district's staff versus their mission and workload. And so those things have been accounted for. I would say this is a lean budget. Could it be leaner? Everything can be leaner. The best way to save money is to fire everyone, and then you don't have any costs at all. So you can always make things leaner if you want, but I would say this is a lean budget. The groups have gone through, the divisions have gone through and done their homework and really look for ways to balance and make things right and proper with the mission and the level of work. As I said before, I would hope that the commissioners would consider having all 5 commissioners here as a member, because we have 3 of our commissioners here as representatives of the county and as the local health as the local funding entity, but we can put forward whatever budget here as a board we feel, and then it's ultimately to the county commissioners as sitting as that body to determine if that request will be funded or not. So that's my spiel as the chair, and so I would open this up for questions for Kim. Just to remember, this is our first touch on this. At the next meeting, we would have the actual resolution from the board to the county asking for a dollar amount to be funded, and we would put that dollar amount forward to the county at the October meeting with the intent that the county would act upon that request prior to our December meeting, and that we would finalize our budget at the December meeting, knowing that in that agency total that you see there where the Spokane County is blank, that would be the number that we would fill in there to balance our budget one way or another in 2024. So I'll open it up for questions or comments.
Mayor, just one point of clarification.
Sure.
I don't want anyone to think that we don't have the TB budget in this budget. We do. We have 403,000 under interlocal grants, and then we have the associated expenses. So the
So it
TVs
zeros out.
It's not part of the local dollar ask.
But that ask is, I don't technically want to say a placeholder, that is the anticipated or budgeted amount that is anticipated for that. It may be more, it may be less, it depends on the level of effort that is necessary to address TB in the county.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you very much. So.
And I will add, we would prefer, if possible, to have the October board meeting actually approve the budget and not move it to the December if we don't have to. But we certainly can. That's our last chance for adjustments.
Well, Commissioner Waldorf.
Thank you, Kim, for all the work, and I really appreciate these little write-ups from some of the divisions for more detailed information. Do you have like an overview? You seem to have been reading from an overview of, changes and FTEs and different things. Is there an overall overview of changes from 23 to 24 that includes like any FTE changes, some of these specific asks from the different divisions?
Not one that I've prepared, but I can certainly
Okay.
speak to the high-level changes.
I was trying to write down notes, but I
Oh,
couldn't
yeah.
do that fast enough. So I would
Certainly.
appreciate just kind of a budget overview that you just kind of presented, but in writing, so I could not have to
Certainly.
try and remember. So the 700 and, how much did we, in the 2023 budget, how much assigned fund balance usage, so basically reserves, were used in 2023?
2023. Yeah, I would have to look up
Yeah,
that
so that
number,
would be
but
also
that's-
helpful
yeah.
for me as a new board member this year,
Sure.
is to do some comparisons to 2023. So, sorry,
No,
I
that's
don't
okay.
want to
That's-
be too much trouble, but if there's a way to show a 2023 column,
Mm-hmm.
that would be helpful for me, just for relative,
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to do
understanding.
that. I can speak to, our 2023 budget was a bit overstated because we thought we would be in the new building for treatment services.
Oh, I
And
see.
so a lot of those personnel, increases, the clients, the revenue was also anticipated to be increased. So we're a little overstated for 23's budget.
In the
but-
treatment services
In the treatment
specifically?
services
Okay.
arena, yes. But then as far as some of the changes, high level, that have happened in '24 is we had a health policy specialist that was in the '23 budget, was also filled until 2023 mid-year. That's vacant, and through the discussions with budget and finance, the decision was made to not bring that position forward.
Oh, because
in
it's
this
vacant
budget.
currently.
Because it's
Okay.
currently
Yeah,
vacant,
that was-
it could
that
bring our
was-
ask down.
You're guessing one of my questions,
Yeah.
which is there any changes? We're not eliminating any positions in this budget. It looks like we're trying to retain some positions, and different divisions are advocating to retain,
There is-
employees and positions.
Yeah, there is growth of positions in the HIV program. They
Okay.
received additional dollars for their Ryan White HOPWA grant. So there's an increase there for about 5 individuals with the offsetting revenue.
Right.
We do have an anticipated decrease with the loss of the COVID funding at the end of this calendar year. And we have FPHS funding that goes through June of this calendar year, or excuse me, of 2024. So we do have a RIF of 3 individuals that were funded because we had COVID funds that are not part of, so that would have initially was part of our 2.5 million ask when we brought it forth to the board, and that those positions as of June of '24 would be the 3 reductions.
And I thought I heard you say the request to the county would be 2 point something, like 70, 2.7?
yes, and
But I
my
see
mistake, yes.
2.34.
So
Is that with the TB? Or no, the TB money's in here.
TB money's in here, so we're asking for about another, I think we're at 290 now.
Okay.
Is what our kind of agreed upon with Spokane County is for TB. We haven't billed up to that amount. Historically, we've only hit that amount one time. So we bill whatever our actual costs are for TB response. And even if we went over, we would have to reach out to the county and share that. So this is recognizing that the TB program is running on a 1 FTE RN and 1 community health worker. And that model is not sustainable for the expertise and the level of cases. And so there's a real need to enhance that program to have 2 RNs with that specialty. So that's a definite increase in ask. Again, we wouldn't bill Spokane County or ask for reimbursement beyond what our actual costs are.
She made a mistake. This should have been 0, and so that's what turns this into 2071, is that should have been 0.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
7,200 to that 2,034,542.
Thank you for that clarity.
Okay. And I'll probably just, I don't want to take up the
Yeah.
whole meeting, but it's for, I'd like to know more about the reserves and how much reserves and the, the decision-making behind how much to use. And so, those are always considerations in every jurisdiction's budget for the next year. And just wondering, how sustainable using those, reserves are into the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a big part of the assigned fund balance usage, actually under foundational public health services, we have 5.936 million, but we also anticipate some unspent dollars between July and December of '23 that actually is eligible to roll forward into January through June of '24. So that's part of that assigned fund balance usage, because we have some FPH reserve dollars there that we would move them 6 months forward. But I'm happy to prepare some additional documents for you.
Josh or Mary, you got comments or questions for Kim on this?
Kevin, you and I went over the budget as the Budget and Finance Committee on a couple of occasions and talked about it. So you did a good job explaining, and I think this is where we're at. I think there's definitely some areas that there was a lot of COVID dollars that came into or beefed up those areas, and that funding isn't sustainable. And we've always talked about that with the health district, that as grants come and go, we have to be realistic as to the staff associated with those. The other thing I guess I would say is on the building, just because we're a component unit, I know when I was the deputy auditor, we transferred the building to the health district for $1. So it truly is owned by the health district. So I mean, I guess I'd have to look at how all that works with the change of structure. So that was always part of, that the health district needed to be, aware and paying attention to how to put funds aside for capital improvements, just like we do at the county as well. So I just want to make that comment out there. And then, I think that this is a budget that is a doable budget. I know that there's definite public health dollars that are going into their affiliate organization with Softball, which is what is helping on the legislative side and tracking that. So I think not having that position is going to be okay because they're actually doing more and picking up their side to be helping all the health districts on a legislative process. So I don't think that that's going to be a big deal. As we see that here, not filling that position. So it's not eliminating somebody who's already working. It's just not filling the position, because I think there's other activities that are being done at the state level through the association for the health districts that will be beneficial and help the health districts out. So those are my comments.
So I will just say that in any discussion of the building, please defer to Commissioner Cuney and her knowledge of the building and not my knowledge of the building. Talk it out of my hat, probably. So, Commissioner Kearns.
Yeah, no, exactly what Commissioner Cuney said about the building, that's my understanding as well. But I did have a question. What's driving the increase in the TV number? Because we've always been below that that 290 number? What's driving the increase? Or is that something maybe Dr. B can hit on in his update?
Sure, I can answer that now. So we've seen an increase on the number of cases due to some of the migration that we're seeing around the country, in particular in Spokane County, where we have a significant number of people coming from countries in which TB is endemic. So that's factor number one. Factor number two, culturally, many of those groups live in multi-family, multi-generational homes. So there's a significant number of transmission as well as treatment. On average, we see 12 to 17 household members. So those need to be evaluated, and most of them need to be treated, either for latent TB or active TB. And we've also seen a significant number of cases beyond the traditional pulmonary TB. So we're seeing ocular TB, disseminated TB, GI TB, central nervous system TB, and that increases the complexity of the cases and the amount of time that it takes to treat the patients, because many of those are not 6 months, they can be 9 months or more. So we've seen a ramp up, and based on what we see from migratory patterns, that's not going to change in the future. This is not like a one-time, because those populations are increasing across the country, and we're one of the areas in which we have seen a significant demographic increase in those segments. Great question.
So I do think that because we have discussed our specific cultural or policies, or our cultural groups here, are we not mostly seeing it amongst the Ukrainian population right now? Or
Marshallese and Ukrainian for the most part.
Thank you.
Significant number.
Any other questions, Josh? Please note that both Commissioner Cuny and Council Board Member Patterson had to drop off for pre-existing meetings, conflicts. So not seeing anything else from Josh. Any other questions from anyone? So I realize that you would like not to have this done in December, but I do think that if we can get this information back out to the board members that Commissioner Waldorf and Dr. Polakani have requested, I do think that we have over the last few years kind of formalized the process that the board makes the ask to the county. So what I would say is that based on this, if you could prepare a resolution for the next meeting for an ask of local dollar funding in the amount of $2,071,722, and then we have that available to us to discuss and then submit to the county. And I would just say, Kim, that we would probably then have to finalize the budget at the December meeting.
Agreed. And that's not a problem. We welcome the dialogue.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions for Kim? Thank you, Kim, for that presentation. Appreciate it. And so that brings us to our health officer report, and we have an immunization assessment and promotion program update.
So I have a recommendation for the board, if it pleases the board. I know that we're running out of time, and we have two components of the health officer report, my standard report and a presentation from Kayla Myers, health program specialty of immunization assessment and promotion, which is actually a very good presentation that we can do in a few minutes. So to do her justice, if the board pleases, we could defer that to the next board meeting, so you can hear the whole presentation.
Yeah, I actually think that because we're having attrition of the board right now,
Okay.
I think with the immunization, and I did notice over in Idaho, they're beginning to have measles outbreak again. So probably a good time to see if some of that begins to filter our way and discuss that at our next meeting. I am sorry to make you sit here through all this wonderful dialogue for so long, but I think given what we're seeing and given where we have been in the past, the full board should understand why we promote immunization and the benefits to the community as a whole. So thank you very much. So yes, we'll take that, we'll move that to the next meeting.
Okay, and I can also defer the bulk of my presentation, since I had about 6 different topics, just to give you a quick update. everything from rabies to listeria, which is something that we need to, for your information, we talk about, but I can do like a 30-second just, yeah, listeria. And not here, we're good. But in the western part of the state associated with a food chain that we have locally, but they did a great job. But I would just like to make a statement on where are we right now. And as you know, we've entered respiratory illness season. So just for the record, I think we have seen an increased number of COVID cases, which was not unexpected. RSV has increased in the southeastern part of the country, which is usually where it starts, Georgia, Florida, then moves east and north and west. And flu is right behind it. We are entering the flu season in October. Now, the biggest issue is the recommendations that we have, which are on our website, follow the CDC, have not changed. And are pretty basic in terms of if you're sick, stay home, get tested. There are therapeutics, new therapeutics for RSV. We'll talk about that. And last but not least, we do have first time this year vaccines for the flu, COVID, and RSV for adults and pregnant women 32, 36 weeks, and monoclonal antibody, 2 passive immunization products for children. So we'll talk more about in detail about that at the next board meeting, but I just wanted to at least let us know that we have entered respiratory illness season. I did talk to our healthcare providers. Things are stable. Like everybody else, they have employees and staff and family members that may be getting sick, and that impacts staffing, but we're not seeing a significant impact on our healthcare resources right now. And I'll stop here and see if anybody has any questions about that subject specifically.
Any questions for Dr. V? Yes, Commissioner.
So if I go to the SRHD website, there is information about like the vaccinations that you're talking about for those 3, for new COVID, flu shots, as well as RSV.
Kayla, you want to take
I just think it's important. I mean, I know I would love a more detailed
Sure.
presentation next month, but what should we know to be able to tell community members in the next several weeks as these things start to, you know, flourish?
I'm going to ask Kayla to answer that, since she's been talking to all of our community.
Because I know that I've had lots of questions just in my own family or in the community. Oh, when are those COVID shots coming? And should I do another one? You know, what about the flu shot? And I've seen TV advertisements that encourage people to get both, but I know there's been some supply issues with the COVID shots.
Let me make a couple of comments, and I'm going to ask Kayla to take the microphone.
Thank you. Just so we're providing accurate information, and we could always send people to your website.
Sure. So first of all, we do have an updated COVID vaccine, which is a monovalent vaccine. And remember, we do realize, is it on? Oh. So that is available. The flu shot is a quadrivalent and has both A and B, as it typically does, so we do have that available too. And I'm asking Kayla to give you some of the details on the RSV, because it's complicated, because 60 and over, but then there's the pediatric component that's a little bit more complicated. So you want to take that?
It was good
You
that I
wanna
was here, right? It's
push.
on. I think it's on.
The button.
Okay. So to answer your first question about the website, we are literally updating it right now because things kept coming out after it was approved by ACIP, and so that just takes a little bit of time. So I just finalized the edits for the RSV information, and we're just finalizing a couple more details for COVID, and then it should be on our website. So no, not right now.
If you could just, you know, send that out to the full board when it's up, that would be great. So thank you
And then-
for all your hard work.
Well, yes, and the other piece is, so the updated COVID vaccine has been approved. It is still being shipped out to everybody. And because of the transition from government purchase to commercialization, going into the avenues just like a flu vaccine where providers have to purchase it for adults, and it's just taking a little bit longer, I think, for some people to, one, receive it and input it into their EMR systems so that it will document properly into our registry. So there's just a lot of components going into it that are delaying it. So my advice is to call your provider before you go. So like when I tried to make my appointment at Kaiser yesterday, they said we're not going to make any appointments until October 3rd because of the delay of shipments. And so a lot of times your provider will have your answer, and then the pharmacies, I know a lot of the pharmacies have the RSV vaccine for older adults. We do not have the baby one yet. We're still working around some laws and stuff around who can administer it because it's different from a regular vaccine. It's a monoclonal antibody. So it has to be administered by a specific person as per how the law is written right now. And so they're kind of navigating that. Plus, it's not recommended to be administered until October anyways because it's meant to last for a specific period of time. So we're not behind yet. And for RSV vaccine, I do just recommend calling a pharmacy that accepts your insurance because they are the ones that received RSV. They were on top of it, we'll just put it that way. And I know a lot of providers are referring their patients to their pharmacy as well.
So just to clarify, the RSV there is one for adults.
There's 2 for 60 and up.
2 for age 60 and older, and then one for
2 and below.
Oh, like infant, toddler.
Correct.
Okay.
Because it's meant to protect them in their first season, all infants, and then they will be recommended to get another shot the second season if they are immunocompromised.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that information.
And only one of the 2 adult vaccines is recommended for pregnant women 32 to 36. Only one of the 2. So that's why I say it gets complicated.
Yeah.
And I should clarify, the recommendations that are on our website are the recommendations what to do in the event that you have been exposed or are symptomatic, et cetera. Those are updated. And we're updating all of the vaccine recommendations just because they are complicated and fast moving. And just to underscore what Kayla said, the pediatric component is a monoclonal antibody, so it's passive immunization. It's quote unquote not a vaccine. Just to make sure we don't confuse. Thanks, Kayla. Good. Any further questions for me?
Any other questions for Dr. V? All right, thank you very much, and we look forward to the full presentation from Kayla next month. So, board member check-in. We'll just, Commissioner Kearns, you got anything out there?
Nope, I don't have anything this month. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Waldorf?
Since we all met last, which seems like a long time ago, I did attend, and I want to thank the Health District for allowing me to attend the NALBO, which is the National Association of Local Board of Health. It happened to be in Tacoma, and it seemed like a great opportunity to go and meet with Board of Health members from across the country and staff from different local public health districts from around the country. There were a lot of folks from the Tacoma-Pierce County health department since it was in Tacoma, so it was great to build some relationships and meet some folks from that health department. And one of the major themes at the conference was supporting workers at public health agencies across the country coming out of COVID. And, we saw a lot of people leaving the workforce. We're trying to get people hired into the workforce, and just what other, just a variety of strategies that different health districts are using to try and build worker wellness programs. So that was like a major theme, which I thought was really interesting, and would be happy to chat more with the administration about some of the notes I took on that. But, it's a challenge everywhere as folks, the mental health and wellness, and a lot of different departments across the country doing just, encouraging peer support, recognizing employees, making sure employees really feel that their work is valued by the community, and because there was just so much tension, coming out of the pandemic. And so it was good topics, and I appreciate the opportunity to attend on, representing the health district.
Thank you, Amber. Dr. Policani?
I have nothing to report, but Thank you, everybody, for a productive meeting.
Thank you all very much. And so that will complete our board member check-in, and that brings us to item number 9 today, adjournment. It is now 2:50 p.m., and this Board of Health meeting is adjourned. We will see everyone at the next regular meeting on October 26th, 2023. Thank you all.